For many, the holy grail for Ukraine's long-term security would be its accession into NATO. The logic is simple. Membership in the world's largest and most powerful military alliance would bring the full force of the other 31 members to bear on Ukraine's side, the ultimate deterrent against future Russian aggression. But what if it's actually the other way around? What if Ukraine's entrance into the alliance would be at least as beneficial for NATO as the other way around? Before Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the idea might have seemed laughable, but it's not that far-fetched anymore. In fact, it's quite the contrary. In 2025, Ukrainian drone operators invited to participate in NATO's Hedgehog 2025 exercises in Estonia forced officials to reset the training several times after quickly inflicting unacceptable casualties on British and Estonian units. Not once, but repeatedly. Now, in the Aurora 2026 NATO exercises held in Sweden, they've done it again, and they've exposed NATO's most dangerous weaknesses in the process. Here's how Ukraine's drone crews shredded NATO's defenses and tactics, and why it matters. Ukraine established a relationship with NATO in the 1990s, following its independence from the collapsed Soviet Union. But the relationship has been growing in leaps and bounds following Russia's invasion and Ukraine's subsequent application for NATO membership in 2022. In particular, Ukraine has increasingly been invited to participate in NATO's various military exercises in Europe. For example, Ukraine has hosted and/or participated in the annual Sea Breeze exercises since 1997, usually held in the Black Sea, but held in the UK in 2025. Ukrainian observers and experts also participated in the massive Steadfast Defender 2024 exercise, the biggest NATO drill since the end of the Cold War, involving more than 90,000 military personnel from 31 NATO allies. But in those and other earlier exercises, Ukraine was more or less a junior partner, there for the training, to enhance interoperability, and essentially to learn from NATO. That started changing in 2025. Thanks to its hard-won experience fighting Russia, the alliance has increasingly started positioning Ukraine as an expert at its exercises, there to teach and add value rather than to learn. At the REPMA's 2025 exercises in Portugal, Ukrainian teams deployed sea drones that sank a NATO frigate in simulation, highlighting asymmetric naval threats. And at the Spring Storm 2026 exercises in Estonia, Ukrainian representatives participated alongside forces from the US, UK, France, Germany, and others. But it was at the Hedgehog 2025 exercises in Estonia that Ukraine really made its mark. The exercises brought together more than 16,000 troops from 12 NATO countries. They trained alongside Ukrainian drone operators, including military personnel temporarily seconded from the front lines. Together, they simulated a contested and congested battlefield with various types of drones. The result was unexpected and shocking for NATO. In one of the training scenarios, a combat group of several thousand soldiers, including troops from the participating British Brigade and the Estonian Division, attempted to launch a mechanized attack. Facing off against them was a Ukrainian drone unit consisting of around 10 soldiers. The Ukrainians were equipped with their drones and Delta, a modern Ukrainian battlefield management system. Delta collects intelligence in real time, uses artificial intelligence to analyze large amounts of information, identifies targets, and coordinates strikes between command and units. The NATO forces didn't stand a chance. In about half a day, the Ukrainian drone operators reportedly destroyed 17 armored vehicles and delivered 30 strikes on other targets. In one simulated battle, Ukrainian drones reportedly wiped out 2 NATO motorized infantry battalions attempting to attack an objective by driving through thick woodland that trapped vehicles on roads. According to Ivar Haniot, the coordinator of unmanned aerial systems for the Estonian Defence League and a participant in the exercise, within the scope of the exercise, they, the 2 battalions, effectively lost their combat capability. Meanwhile, he said NATO units didn't even get to our drone operators. As another unidentified participant recalled, the NATO combat group simply moved without any camouflage, setting up tents and armored vehicles. All of this was destroyed. Now, some defense experts have been raising the alarm for some time that the war in Ukraine has fundamentally changed the way war is waged, and that NATO risks being left behind. The Hedgehog 2025 exercises represented a serious wake-up call for the alliance. Now, Ukraine has repeated the trick. and those warnings have evolved into large red flags. The Sweden-led Aurora 2026 exercises ran from April 27 to May 13, 2026. Taking place largely in southern and central Sweden and the Baltic Sea, the exercise mobilized a reported 18,000 troops across land, sea, and air forces from 13 countries: the host Sweden, the US, the UK, Denmark, Norway, Finland, Germany, France, the Netherlands, Canada, Estonia, Latvia, and Ukraine. Even Sweden's Crown Princess Victoria was present, dressed in full military gear. The wide-reaching exercises practiced defending Sweden against naval raids, joint ground and air operations, and emergency movement of troops and material to a threatened region. But the main event was a force-on-force defense of the Swedish island Gotland in the western Baltic against a simulated Russian hybrid war attack. As Rear Admiral Jonas Wikström, the Swedish exercise director, described it, the scenario is that on the eastern side of the NATO border, like Finland and the Baltic states, we have a massive buildup of enemy units, a concentration of units on that side, and we also have, within Sweden and other allied nations, hybrid activities. It's an increased level of hybrid activities like sabotage, cyber attacks, influence operations, things like that. That translated to a pair of Ukrainian drone teams acting as adversaries as part of the notional Russian force attacking Gotland. The first was from the 1st National Guard Brigade Buravei and the second from the 20th National Guard Brigade Leopard. Attempting to defend against them were some 17,300 Allied troops. These included formations from Sweden's South Skåne Regiment, the Luftvärnsregementet LV6 Air Defense Regiment, and the 32nd Home Guard Regiment, alongside elements of the US Marine Corps 3rd Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company, the Combat Logistics Battalions 24 and 27, Danish Home Guard troops, and British infantry. More than 17,000 of NATO's finest against a handful of Ukrainian drone operators. On paper, it's a complete mismatch. But on the ground, NATO's forces suffered some of the same damage as they did at Hedgehog 2025. During the last 3 days of the exercises from May 11 to 13, the NATO units were tasked with defending key installations under a Russian attack combining conventional military assault with unconventional war tactics. As we'll discover a bit later on, this distinction between conventional and unconventional is a fundamental part of NATO's problem. The Ukrainians' role in the exercise was to act as Russian attackers using drones. The Ukrainian units were operating standard, domestically manufactured FPV drones fitted with directional antennas and extended life batteries. The operators weren't equipped with anything special by the standards of the war in Ukraine. They controlled their drones with the commercial tablets, Game Boy analog control units, and off-the-shelf viewing goggles that you find throughout Ukraine's military. To repel this seemingly humble attacking force, NATO's defenses included state-of-the-art Swedish Gripen fighter jets, Archer long-range howitzers, advanced CV-90 infantry fighting vehicles, and Leopard 2A8 main battle tanks, among others. Unexpectedly, that array of advanced and very costly equipment got pulverized. A Ukrainian pilot, identified as Tarek, told the Associated Press that his unit's successful attacks forced the organizers to stop training and return troops and equipment that had been notionally destroyed by attack drones back to life 3 times. According to a statement from the Ukrainians' First Corps, due to the effectiveness of the Ukrainian FPV pilots, their participation in certain stages of the exercises was even curtailed so that other units could complete the exercises without completely losing their equipment to Ukrainian drones. Now, in one mechanized assault scenario, a Ukrainian crew working alongside Swedish pilots wiped out 28 of approximately 32 pieces of major equipment. In another, Ukrainian FPV swarmed and destroyed the defenses of a military airfield in less than 20 minutes, hitting all targets successfully with no drones lost. It was humiliating. But to make matters worse from NATO's perspective, the Ukrainian drone units weren't even its most elite. That was at least a mitigating factor in the Hedgehog 2025 embarrassment. Those exercises involved Ukraine's feared Nemesis unit, aka the Armed Forces of Ukraine's 412th Unmanned Systems Forces Brigade, one of the USF's standout drone units. Since the start of 2026 alone, the elite brigade has reportedly destroyed 20 Russian tanks, the equivalent of 2 full tank companies. Overall, since 2022, they're credited with destroying or damaging nearly 200 tanks, 300 armored fighting vehicles, and more than 1,000 vehicles. The unit has also taken out a growing number of sophisticated Russian air defense systems, including Tor M2, Buk M3, and OSA launchers, as well as Borisogleb's 2 electronic warfare stations. In one instance, they eliminated 3 such air defense systems worth an estimated $80 to $90 million in a single month. They're also innovators. In April 2026, Nemesis achieved a global first by destroying a Russian Gerin attack drone using an interceptor drone launched from an unmanned surface vessel, or USV. So it's not that much of a surprise that a team with Nemesis's experience and expertise would lay into NATO defenses with the same skill and ferocity as they do to the Russians all the time. But that wasn't the case in Gotland. At the Aurora 2026 exercises, the Ukrainian participants were more or less standard units that Ukraine deploys across the vast front lines. Both the Buravet and Lyubart teams are combat-seasoned, reliable, and competent fighting outfits, but they're not considered to be at the elite level of Ukraine's Special Forces Commandos or USF forces like Nemesis. The 1st Brigade's Organic Drone Battalion, Condor, participated in the training. Fairly typical of AFU drone units, Condor operates almost exclusively Ukraine-manufactured observation, kamikaze, and bomber drones, and NATO couldn't cope with them. Now, click the like button if you're enjoying the video, and hit that subscribe button if you want more like it. Here on The Military Show, we deliver fresh updates and sharp analysis on the most important stories daily. Subscribe now so you never miss out. So, why do the NATO forces fare so badly against Ukraine's compact drone units? Well, according to Anatoly Merkotun, a large part of the reason is outdated tactics. Former police detective Merkotun is the commander of Nemesis and a familiar name in Ukrainian drone circles. He was an early proponent and developer of the USF's now ubiquitous bomber drone technology, and one of the pioneers of using small drone video-derived imagery and data fusion to develop intelligence and conduct strikes more efficiently. So, he's well qualified to comment. In a post-exercise interview, he said that the NATO tactics of keeping fighting vehicles and troops in compact groups seemed nearly suicidal, pointing out that both the Russian and Ukrainian armed forces had abandoned that way of fighting years ago. Indeed, it's become rare to see armored columns on maneuvers in Ukraine or deployed in groups of more than 2 or 3 at a time. Drones are already responsible for 70 to 80% of battlefield losses on both sides, with Russian FPV and other kamikaze drones, which cost around $400 each, destroying several M1 Abrams tanks worth $8 to $10 million per unit. Russian losses are of course much higher than that. Their tanks and armored vehicles might not cost quite as much, but they've been getting wrecked by Ukrainian drones at a scarcely believable rate. And of course, it takes much longer to produce an expensive piece of armor than it does to churn out thousands of cheap, deadly FPV drones. The problem is, it's not just Russia and Ukraine that have embraced this new technology. By the looks of it, Israel is losing advanced Merkava tanks, Namir armored vehicles, bulldozers, and other heavy equipment at a rapid rate in Lebanon. The Hezbollah militia is wreaking havoc against its much more powerful foe with FPV and fiber optic guided drones. The Israeli invasion has suffered as a result, and casualties of both troops and equipment are soaring, just like for Russia in Ukraine. As the Israeli newspaper Times of Israel puts it, Israel should have seen it coming but was caught off guard. Evidently, so has NATO. Meanwhile, all of NATO's main rivals appear to embrace the new technology and adapt to their military doctrines accordingly. And despite a massive effort on the alliance's part to remedy this situation, the gap appears to still be growing. Peel away the bravado, and Iran has basically fought the US and Israel to a strategic standstill in the Persian Gulf, using long-range kamikaze drones, innovative ballistic missiles, and asymmetric tactics. Even more concerning are new military developments from China, especially in the use of AI-enabled drones. In March 2026, China unveiled the Atlas Drone Swarm Operations System. In footage that looks straight out of a sci-fi movie, a single operator controlled a swarm of 96 largely autonomous drones simultaneously. In January, they showcased a single operator controlling a swarm of 200 drones in tight formation, but the March showcase was next level. In the demonstration, the swarm launched drones at 3-second intervals, achieving full airborne status in less than 5 minutes. Once launched, the drones use swarm intelligence algorithms to autonomously coordinate reconnaissance, electronic jamming, decoying, and kinetic strikes. They can communicate with each other to avoid collisions, reconfigure formations in real time, and independently identify and lock onto targets without continuous human input. As we've seen with Ukraine's AI-enabled, largely autonomous Hornet drones, Ukraine isn't far behind in terms of autonomous individual drones or even smaller swarms. So are many other Western designers and developers. In fact, in some ways, the US's own mass drone swarm program, Replicator, is ahead of China's. Launched primarily to counter China's growing prowess in the field, the Replicator initiative successfully met its goal of fielding thousands of attritable autonomous systems across air, sea, and land domains in August 2025. By early 2026, the program evolved into Replicator 2, which focuses on counter-drone swarms and further scaling production, marking a shift from demonstration to active deployment. So technically, while China is still in the early demonstration phase, the US is already fielding hundreds of autonomous drone swarms. But there's a big difference. The Atlas system suggests that China is focused on centralized homogeneous swarms. Replicator aims for something else entirely: heterogeneous integration. In other words, connecting different types of drones from different vendors like Anduril, Shield AI, and Skydio into a single, centrally controlled network force. Unlike Atlas's single centralized swarm, Replicator integrates diverse platforms like the XQ-58A Valkyrie and various small UAVs. All the different drones are coordinated by advanced AI software like Anduril's Lattice and Shield AI's HiveMind. These systems are designed to operate in GPS-denied and communication-jammed environments, autonomously collaborating to identify and engage targets. As you can imagine, it's a much more technically complex process to get right than a single unified drone swarm, and likely to be many times more expensive. Perhaps most tellingly, nothing remotely as visually impressive as the Atlas demo has yet been made public by the program. But that's the US, which has identified China as its main adversary, not NATO. NATO's main rival isn't China, at least not yet. It's Russia. And while Russia is making incremental progress in developing its own autonomous drone swarms, Ukraine seems to be several steps ahead. But autonomous drone swarms are an emerging technology, not yet entrenched. And in many senses, as Ukraine keeps exposing in exercises, NATO isn't as prepared for the threat Russia already poses as it should be, especially in the far north. It would be a mistake for NATO to be lulled into a false sense of complacency by Ukraine's recent successes with drones and asymmetric tactics, impressive and damaging as they are. Like Ukraine, Russia has been compelled to adapt to the new way of waging war in real time on the battlefield. NATO hasn't. Russia, to a large extent, has transitioned to a wartime economy and now fields the world's largest industrial-scale drone ecosystem outside China. It's steadily institutionalizing combat lessons from Ukraine. And if it wants to compete, it doesn't have a choice. Following Kyiv's lead, Moscow has established a dedicated branch for unmanned systems, expanded mass training of drone operators, and is forming new drone units across the joint force. Annual drone production now exceeds 1.5 million drones across types and sizes, with Western intelligence services expecting further sharp increases driven by Chinese industrial support and sanctions evasion. In the Arctic, Russia is likely to use drones as integrated force multipliers, enabling persistent ISR along Arctic littorals and the Northern Sea route, queuing bastion coastal defense systems, supporting anti-submarine and anti-surface operations, and conducting long-range strikes with one-way attack drones and advanced missiles. These activities will be tightly coupled with aggressive cyber and electronic warfare to degrade Allied sensing, targeting, and command and control capabilities. To combat all of that effectively, NATO won't be able to rely solely on its traditional dominance in air power and warships. It'll have to fight fire with fire, or drones with drones. And as Ukraine has demonstrated, it's not yet quite up to the task. That's not to say the alliance isn't taking the threat very seriously and acting accordingly. Look no further than the forthcoming Silent Swarm 2026 exercises scheduled for July 2026 in Estonia. Although originally primarily a US Navy-led event, it's taken on an increasingly international nature over its 4 previous editions, 2022, 3, 4, and 5. The 2026 edition will showcase the Alliance's evolving doctrine for countering autonomous drone swarms and integrating manned-unmanned teaming across land and air domains. With a focus on electronic warfare, AI-enabled autonomy, and layered short-range air defense, Silent Swarm 2026 clearly reflects NATO's urgent response to the lessons from Ukraine. On a more practical level, at the Aurora 2026, Ukrainian trainers shared their experience in using UAVs, coordinating units and working in conditions of active electronic warfare in briefings to Swedish, French, United Kingdom and Netherlands service members. According to Andres Gustafsson, Swedish commander of the brigade combat team taken to the cleaners by the Ukrainian crews, "They are miles ahead of us when it comes to drone warfare, so we really appreciate them coming here to share their experience with us, and we have a lot to learn from them." But there's a lot more that NATO needs to change if it wants to master next-generation warfare post-haste. According to a Ukrainian drone operator identified as Garat, who took part in Aurora 2026, NATO forces have potential but need significant improvements in drones, tactics, and understanding of drone warfare at the commander level. And it starts with the alliance's doctrine. As noted earlier, during Aurora 2026, the alliance considered the use of drones to be unconventional. It underscores how, despite recent updates, NATO doctrine still treats drones largely as supplements to deterrence and defense rather than core elements. The consequence, as Garat suggested, is that commanders lack mature concepts for integrating unmanned systems into multi-domain operations against a drone-enabled adversary like Russia. Recent initiatives to support concept development, standardized training, and operational experimentation are definitely steps in the right direction, but more is likely required. Training pipelines and innovation pathways will also need to be urgently established and refined. Ukraine has had to develop these rapidly and under fire, adapt or die, so to speak. But assembling the solutions and the humans to design and operate them is likely to be significantly more difficult across a 32-nation alliance than a single nation like Russia or Ukraine, and that's without considering integrating everything coherently. Capital to fund all of this will also need to be mobilized and rationalized. At the moment, while private capital is starting to flood into military startups and advanced tech, the allocation of both public and private capital into next-generation defense spending is a bit of a free-for-all to say the least. Structures to consolidate and streamline production, like Ukraine's Brave One marketplace, will likely need to be established within the alliance to ensure interoperability and efficient resource allocation. Brave One allows individual Ukrainian units to buy a government-approved range of weapon systems directly, reducing red tape and providing flexibility while ring-fencing procurement to reinforce interoperability. NATO needs to get the balance right. Without strong, systemic demand for key platform categories such as tactical ISR drones, loitering munitions, and unmanned logistics vehicles, the risk is that allies will continue paying premium prices for bespoke systems while Russia floods the regions with battle-proven mass-produced platforms. So, an urgent overhaul is needed, and an urgent overhaul is underway. But will it be too little too late? In the end, it may well turn out that NATO needs Ukraine more than Ukraine needs NATO. Nothing beats experience, and Ukraine has bottomless amounts of it. If the results of Hedgehog 2025 and Aurora 2026 are anything to go by, for NATO, it might be a case of if you can't beat them, join them. Or in this case, let them join you. We'll obviously keep you updated as we learn more, so subscribe to the channel to hear about it first. In the meantime, check out this video about a genius way a Ukrainian engineer discovered to steal Russian drones. Thanks for watching.